Ethan stared out the viewport of the transport shuttle, the alien world below slowly coming into view. The colors were unlike anything he had ever seen on Earth. Emerald forests that shimmered in the sunlight, rivers that glowed faintly as though infused with light itself, and mountains that stretched higher than any human-made structure. It was beautiful, almost frightening, and completely alien. His father had promised him a smooth transition to their new home. But Ethan had a sinking feeling that smooth wasn't going to describe what awaited him. As the shuttle touched down on the landing platform, Ethan's stomach tightened. He had traveled across star systems to reach this world, leaving behind his friends, his school, and the familiarity of Earth. Now, he was about to meet his father's new wife and, more importantly, his new stepsister, Kaylee. The idea of an alien sibling was strange enough, but as Xiran, he had read about their species in textbooks, mostly descriptions of their biology and mating behaviors, but nothing could have prepared him for living with one. The doors hissed open, and Ethan stepped out, blinking against the brightness of the twin suns. He felt a presence before he saw it. A figure approached, tall and lithe, with skin that shimmered faintly in patterns across her arms and neck. Her eyes were large, almost hypnotic, with iridescent hues that shifted as she moved. Ethan swallowed. This was Kaylee. "Hello," she said, her voice melodic but cautious. Her gaze was steady, almost piercing, and Ethan felt like she was looking past him and into his very thoughts. He suddenly wished he had prepared something more than a nervous wave. Hi, I'm Ethan," he stammered. Kaylee tilted her head as though studying him. A soft hum vibrated in her chest, a sound Ethan would later learn was a Xiran form of assessment. "You are human," she said, almost stating the obvious. "Yes," Ethan replied, rubbing the back of his neck. "That's me." The shuttle ride had been long, and the air in the landing bay smelled different, sweet but metallic, like a strange mix of flowers and machinery. Ethan took a deep breath, trying to calm himself. This was going to be his new life, whether he liked it or not. Their father, a tall man with a calm demeanor, appeared behind Kaylee. "Ethan, welcome home," he said, his voice warm but tinged with the nervous energy of a man juggling two very different worlds. "Kaylee, why don't you show your brother to his room?" Kaylee's lips curved into the faintest hint of a smile. She nodded and gestured for Ethan to follow her. Ethan hesitated, then stepped after her. As they moved through the sprawling, multi-level home, he noticed things that reminded him of Earth, but with subtle differences. Furniture with curved, flowing shapes, panels that emitted soft light without any visible bulbs, and a pervasive feeling of energy in the walls themselves. "You'll have your own room," Kaylee said, glancing back at him. Her eyes flickered with curiosity, and Ethan felt both observed and tested at the same time. "Thanks," he said, trying to sound confident. I appreciate it." Kaylee didn't respond immediately. Instead, she stopped near a large window that looked out over a shimmering lake, its surface reflecting the two suns. "This planet is different," she said softly, almost to herself. Ethan nodded. "Yeah, it's amazing." A sudden vibration under his feet made him stumble slightly. Kaylee's eyes widened and she let out a low hum. "Stay close," she warned. The floor shifted slightly, and Ethan realized the entire building was alive in ways he didn't understand. Panels and floors adjusted subtly to their movements, almost as if responding to their presence. Later, Ethan's father joined them for dinner. The table was set with dishes Ethan couldn't identify, shimmering fruits that seemed to glow faintly, bowls of translucent liquids that changed color when stirred. He picked up a spoon cautiously, trying a bite of a fruit that looked like a glowing pear. The taste exploded in his mouth, sweet, tangy, and almost electric. He blinked, unsure whether to swallow or spit it out. Kaylee watched him silently, her gaze unrelenting. "You'll get used to it," she said finally, her voice calm but firm. "Xiran food is different, but it sustains in ways human food cannot." Ethan nodded, chewing slowly. "I guess I'll have to." After dinner, his father spoke quietly with Kaylee, leaving Ethan alone for a few minutes. He wandered to the window, staring out at the alien landscape. The stars were different here. Closer, brighter, and unfamiliar constellations stretched across the sky. He felt a pang of homesickness, but also something else, curiosity. How did humans and Xiran survive together on the same planet? Could he adapt to this world? His thoughts were interrupted by a soft sound behind him. Kaylee had returned, standing in the doorway, her posture relaxed but her eyes still calculating. Ethan, you need to know something about Xeran biology, she said, her tone serious. My mating season will begin soon. You should be aware because it affects everything, mood, energy, instincts. Ethan froze. He had read a little about Xeran mating habits in the textbooks at his father's study, but hearing it in person, so casually, made his stomach twist. What does that mean for me? He asked cautiously. Kaylee tilted her head, her iridescent skin shifting slightly in color. It means I may act unpredictably. You must avoid direct interference, maintain boundaries, and respect my space. My instincts will be strong, and even small actions can trigger reactions. Ethan nodded quickly, trying to mask his nerves. Okay, I can do that. I'll respect your space. Kaylee's eyes softened slightly. Good, you will need awareness and patience. Xeran instincts are not something humans fully understand. Even minor missteps can cause chaos. For the next several days, Ethan tried to acclimate. He observed Kaylee closely, noticing subtle changes in her behavior. Moments of high energy, sudden bursts of curiosity, and times when she seemed distant, lost in thought. Her moods shifted like the weather, and Ethan learned quickly to tread lightly. One afternoon, Kaylee demonstrated a Xeran exercise that involved channeling energy through her limbs and voice. She moved fluidly, almost like liquid, and Ethan could feel the resonance of her presence vibrating in the room. It helps control instincts, she explained. If I fail, the effects can be overwhelming. Ethan nodded, impressed but nervous. I'll make sure to give you space. That evening, a minor incident occurred that tested his resolve. Kaylee's instincts triggered a sudden burst of energy, causing lights to flicker and panels to shift. Ethan froze, unsure what to do, but Kaylee quickly regained control, her skin calming to a soft, steady hue. See? She said, not unkindly. Even now I manage. But this is why awareness is crucial. Ethan exhaled slowly. I get it. I'll be careful. Despite the challenges, he found himself intrigued by Kaylee. She was unpredictable, alien, and difficult to read, but fascinating in ways that made him want to understand her. Her uniqueness, once intimidating, now drew him in. He realized that living on this planet with her would be difficult, but also an adventure unlike any other. As the suns dipped below the horizon, casting a surreal glow across the landscape, Ethan stood at the window, watching the alien world come alive with night. The forests shimmered with luminescent life, and the lakes glowed faintly in rhythm with some unseen current. He knew he was far from Earth, far from everything familiar, but for the first time he felt a spark of excitement. Kaylee appeared beside him silently, her gaze on the same view. Tomorrow we begin proper acclimation exercises, she said softly. You will learn the ways of this house, the rhythms of Xeran life, and how to coexist. It will not be easy, but you have potential. Ethan swallowed, nodding. I'll do my best. Kaylee's faint smile hinted at approval, and for a moment the tension between human and alien seemed manageable. But as Ethan would soon learn, Kaylee's mating season was just beginning, and the days ahead would test his patience, ingenuity, and understanding of a species far beyond human comprehension. He returned to his room that night with a mix of excitement and apprehension. The alien world outside was vast and strange, but more intimidating was the life inside the house, life that moved to rhythms he barely understood. He lay down on the unfamiliar bedding, staring at the ceiling that seemed to shift subtly with the energy of the building itself. Tomorrow, the real challenge would begin. The next morning, Ethan awoke to a strange sound, like a low vibrating hum that seemed to resonate through the walls of the house. At first, he thought it was the building itself, reacting to the twin suns' early light, but then he realized the sound was coming from Kaylee. He stepped out of his room and found her in the main hall, pacing slowly, her iridescent skin shifting subtly as the hum grew louder. Good morning, Ethan said cautiously, trying to sound cheerful. Is everything okay? Kaylee turned her gaze toward him, eyes flickering in color. It has begun, she said simply, her voice calm but edged with tension. The first stage of my mating season. Ethan froze. He had read about this stage in the small cultural guide his father had left for him, but reading about it and seeing it were very different. First stage, meaning? He asked, stepping closer carefully. It means my instincts will increase gradually, Kaylee explained. I will feel more energetic, more reactive, and at times unpredictable. You must be aware of your actions, maintain distance, and remain calm. Ethan nodded quickly, trying to internalize her words. Okay, calm, got it. Over the next few hours, Ethan observed Kaylee more closely than ever. She moved with a grace that was almost liquid, her steps making no sound on the polished floor. She hummed constantly, a low vibration that seemed to affect the air itself. The lights in the house flickered slightly in response to her presence, as though her energy subtly influenced the environment. At breakfast, Ethan tried to focus on eating, but Kaylee's presence was overwhelming. Her moods shifted quickly. She would pause mid-bite, eyes narrowing at some invisible point in the room, then relax suddenly, letting out a soft hum. Ethan realized he had to remain calm, not reacting too quickly to her shifts. You must remember, Kaylee said mid-meal, her voice soft but commanding. Any sudden movement, loud sound, or unintentional touch can trigger an instinctive response. It is not dangerous if handled correctly, but it can be chaotic. Ethan swallowed, nodding again. Right. Handled correctly. The first challenge came in the form of a household task. Kaylee needed to move a set of floating panels in the main hall, an activity that required precise control of her energy. Ethan, thinking he could help, stepped forward. Wait, Kaylee warned, her skin flickering. You must not interfere unless I request it. But before Ethan could stop himself, he reached out to steady one of the panels. Kaylee's hum intensified, vibrating through the room, and the panels began to spin wildly. Ethan jumped back, narrowly avoiding a collision as Kaylee focused her energy to stabilize them. See? She said, her voice calm now but firm. Even small, well-intentioned interference can cause chaos. You must observe, not act. Ethan nodded, his heart still racing. Got it. Observe, not act. The day progressed with more challenges. Kaylee's energy levels surged unpredictably. Sometimes she moved so fast she seemed to blur. Other times she became completely still, lost in thought. Ethan learned quickly to predict subtle cues. A slight shift in her gaze, a soft change in her hum, the way her skin patterns moved. Each cue indicated how she was feeling and whether it was safe to approach. By midday, Ethan realized that he was learning more about her species than any textbook could teach. Xerans were not only biologically different, but they thought differently, perceived differently, and experienced the world in ways humans could barely understand. And yet he felt a growing sense of admiration. Around mid-afternoon, Kaylee's instincts triggered another episode. She darted through the hall, energy crackling around her in waves. Objects floated briefly before settling, and Ethan had to duck behind a pillar to avoid being caught in the surge. When it was over, Kaylee's hum had quieted and she seemed almost embarrassed by the display. Sorry, she said softly, eyes downcast. I cannot always control this. It is natural, but it must not harm anyone. Ethan stepped out cautiously, trying to appear calm. It's okay, I understand. Really. Her eyes lifted, meeting his, and he saw a flicker of appreciation. For the first time, Kaylee seemed to trust him not to react with fear or panic. Later, they moved to the training room where Kaylee performed exercises designed to help control her energy surges. She demonstrated floating motions, precise energy manipulation, and meditative hums that resonated through the room. Ethan watched intently, realizing that these were not just exercises, they were survival techniques. Ways to manage instincts that could otherwise be overwhelming. You will need to learn this, Kaylee said, glancing at him. If we are to coexist safely during my mating season, understanding my control methods is crucial. You cannot interfere, but you must recognize patterns, predict behaviors, and respond appropriately to signals. Ethan nodded, mentally noting each movement, each hum, each shift in her skin. He was learning to read her like a language, subtle and intricate. As evening approached, a minor incident shook their calm. Kaylee's instincts surged unexpectedly while preparing dinner. Floating dishes trembled and clattered, and Ethan froze, unsure whether to help or remain still. Kaylee's energy shifted in waves, and he realized the importance of maintaining composure. Slowly, carefully, he guided her to a safe zone, a small chamber designed to absorb excess energy without touching her directly. Kaylee's hum slowed and the room settled. You did well, Kaylee said, her voice quieter now, tinged with relief. You remained calm. That is exactly what is needed. Ethan exhaled, the tension in his shoulders easing slightly. Thanks. I think I'm starting to understand. Kaylee's skin shimmered softly, a sign of approval among Xerans.
Yes, you must continue observing, learning, adapting.
My instincts will intensify in the coming days. You must be ready. That night, Ethan lay in his room reflecting on the day. He had survived his first full day alongside Kaylee's mating season, but he knew the challenges were only beginning. He realized that surviving physically was only one part of the test. The greater challenge was understanding, empathizing, and adapting to a being so different from himself. As he drifted to sleep, he thought about the moments of connection, the subtle flicker of Kaylee's eyes when she appreciated his calm, the soft hum that signaled trust, and the way she had allowed him to guide her to safety. He realized that despite the challenges, a bond was forming, one based on respect, understanding, and the quiet strength of human ingenuity meeting alien instinct. In the quiet of the night, Ethan understood something important. This was more than surviving Kaylee's mating season. It was about learning to coexist, to bridge the gap between species and to navigate a world that was as alien emotionally as it was physically. And for the first time he felt not fear but excitement. The next day promised more challenges but also more lessons. Kaylee's instincts would continue to grow stronger, and Ethan would need all his focus, patience, and creativity to adapt. Yet he felt ready, emboldened by the small victories of observation, calm, and empathy. Outside his window, the alien world shimmered under the twin suns, vibrant and alive. Ethan knew he had stepped into something far larger than himself and perhaps in time, something far more extraordinary than he could ever imagine. The twin suns had barely risen when the planetary weather control panels began to flash urgent alerts. Ethan was in the common room practicing the subtle gestures Kaylee had taught him for observing her energy patterns. He froze as the walls shimmered and a deep hum vibrated through the house. Kaylee's voice called out from the hall. "A storm is approaching. Immediate lockdown is required." Ethan turned to see her already moving, her skin glowing softly with the early stage energy of her mating season. The hum she emitted vibrated through the floor and walls, and Ethan felt it deep in his chest. Even though the house was designed to accommodate Xeran physiology, he realized quickly that this storm would be more than a simple weather event. It would amplify Kaylee's instincts. He followed her as she moved gracefully through the corridors, activating security panels with precise gestures. The doors locked automatically, and the walls shifted subtly to create a smaller, reinforced living area. "We'll stay in the inner chambers until the storm passes," Kaylee explained, her voice steady but with a hint of tension. "It will last for several days. You must remain aware of my energy at all times." Ethan nodded, feeling both nervous and fascinated. He had been preparing for this moment since arriving, but now the test was real. The storm outside howled, a mixture of wind, rain, and strange electromagnetic fluctuations unique to this alien planet. The lights inside flickered faintly, responding to the storm's energy, and Ethan could feel the house itself adjusting, almost as if it were alive. For the first few hours, Kaylee's energy remained controlled. She moved with practiced precision, tending to small household tasks, her hum a constant but calming presence. Ethan observed every movement, the slight shifts in her gaze, the way her hands glowed faintly when she exerted energy, and the subtle patterns in her skin that indicated mood changes. "You're doing well," Kaylee said unexpectedly, her eyes flickering a softer color. "You've maintained calm, and that allows me to focus." "You are learning faster than I expected," Ethan's chest swelled with pride. "Thanks. I'm trying." But as the storm intensified, Kaylee's instincts began to react. A sudden surge of energy burst from her, causing the lights to flicker violently and the floor panels to shift beneath Ethan's feet. He froze, unsure whether to move or stay still. Kaylee's eyes glowed brightly, and her hum rose to a resonant pitch that made the air vibrate. "Remember," she called, "observe and adapt. Do not interfere directly." Ethan concentrated, watching for subtle cues. He noticed the shift in her skin color. Rapid streaks of bright patterns meant the surge was about to peak. He moved carefully, stepping just far enough to avoid the floating objects around him while staying within her field of view. He began guiding her gently with verbal cues, reminding her of the grounding techniques she had taught him. Gradually, her hum stabilized, and the energy surge subsided. Kaylee exhaled, her skin returning to softer hues. "Well done," she said softly. "You reacted without fear. That is exactly what is needed during extreme episodes." Ethan wiped sweat from his brow, feeling both relief and exhilaration. He realized that surviving Kaylee's energy surges required not just calm, but acute observation and quick thinking, skills humans often underestimated when dealing with alien physiology. As night fell, the storm showed no sign of abating. Kaylee suggested they move to the inner chamber, a smaller reinforced space designed to absorb excess energy and provide safety during extreme weather. The chamber was minimalistic yet comfortable, with walls that could shift to adjust energy flows and floor panels that hummed softly to neutralize vibrations. Ethan stepped in cautiously, noticing the subtle glow in the chamber's walls as they responded to Kaylee's presence. "This is impressive," he said quietly. Kaylee gave a faint smile, her eyes flickering in approval. "It is designed for Xeran energy management. But during mating season, control is difficult. You must learn to coexist in shared spaces under stress. That is the true test." Over the next few hours, the storm forced them into close quarters. Kaylee's energy pulses became stronger and more frequent, testing Ethan's ability to remain composed. At first he struggled, instinctively flinching when her hum intensified or when objects floated unexpectedly. But he reminded himself of her earlier advice. Observe, predict, and respond calmly. He noticed patterns in her energy surges. A flicker of her skin, a change in the tone of her hum, even the angle of her gaze. Each indicated a rising wave of instinct. Ethan began to anticipate her movements, adjusting his position to avoid triggering further surges. With each successful prediction, his confidence grew, and Kaylee's reactions became less chaotic. At one point, a minor surge sent a small table floating toward him. Without touching it directly, Ethan used a soft verbal cue, recalling a grounding technique Kaylee had demonstrated. The table slowly descended and Kaylee's hum softened. "You are improving rapidly," she said, eyes flickering softly. "Humans are perceptive in ways Xerans sometimes overlook. Your instincts of observation are strong." Ethan felt a mix of pride and relief. Her praise, though subtle, meant more than he expected. He realized that part of surviving this mating season wasn't just understanding her biology. It was learning to communicate without words, to predict behaviors, and to act with patience and respect. Night deepened, and the storm continued unabated. Outside, lightning crackled in colors Ethan had never seen, illuminating the alien landscape in shifting hues. Inside, the chamber provided safety, yet the energy between him and Kaylee created its own tension, a silent test of trust and cooperation. During a quiet moment, Kaylee sat across from him, her gaze softening. "You do not fear me," she said simply. Ethan shook his head. "No, not anymore. I've learned that fear won't help either of us. I need to understand you and work with you." Her skin shimmered faintly, a Xeran sign of approval. "Few humans adapt so quickly. Many panic. You have potential." They spent the following day in a careful routine. Ethan learned to anticipate the timing of her energy surges, recognizing subtle physical and behavioral cues. He even began to notice small signs of her moods, how her hum would soften when she was calm, or how her skin patterns changed when she felt frustration. He realized that patience, observation, and adaptability were more powerful than brute force or immediate intervention. By the third day of confinement, a new challenge arose. Kaylee's instincts reached a peak, creating a surge of energy that destabilized the chamber's controls. Panels shifted, lights flickered wildly, and small objects floated erratically. Ethan felt panic rising in his chest but forced himself to remain calm. He observed her, noticing the early warning signs, the rapid flicker of skin, a sharp change in her hum, a subtle contraction in her posture. Using the techniques she had taught him, he guided her verbally, reminding her to focus on grounding and breathing exercises. Gradually, the energy surge subsided. Kaylee exhaled, exhausted but steady. "You are remarkable," she said softly. "Even during extreme episodes, you maintained composure. Few humans could do so. That earns respect." Ethan smiled weakly, feeling both relief and pride. "Thanks. I'm learning from you." For the remainder of the storm, they settled into a rhythm. Kaylee's energy would rise and fall, and Ethan would observe, predict, and respond calmly. The storm outside mirrored the surges inside, but for the first time they moved together as a team, rather than chaotic individuals. By the fifth day, the storm began to subside. The house's energy system stabilized and the inner chamber's walls glowed softly, signaling equilibrium. Ethan felt a deep sense of accomplishment. He had survived intense episodes of Kaylee's mating season while maintaining calm, respecting her boundaries, and even earning her trust. Kaylee's skin shimmered softly, a clear sign of approval. "You have done well," she said. "The storm was a test of endurance, patience, and understanding. You have passed, but remember, the mating season is not yet complete. Greater challenges await." Ethan nodded, exhausted but determined. "I'll be ready." That night he lay in his room reflecting on the past few days. The storm had tested every skill he had learned: observation, patience, prediction, and calm under pressure. He realized that surviving on this planet required more than physical ability. It required understanding, empathy, and cooperation across species. He also felt something else: respect and a subtle bond forming between himself and Kaylee. They had survived a literal storm together, and in doing so, had begun to bridge the gap between human and Xeran instincts. As he drifted to sleep, he knew that the days ahead would be even more challenging. Kaylee's mating season was intensifying, and the subtle cues he had learned so far would be put to the ultimate test. Yet for the first time he felt confident. He was not just surviving, he was learning, adapting, and beginning to thrive in this alien world. Outside his window, the twin suns rose again, casting light over a planet still recovering from the storm. Ethan felt a strange sense of anticipation. The challenges were far from over, but he now had the skills, awareness, and growing trust of Kaylee to face them. And for the first time, he understood that this was more than just surviving a Xeran mating season. It was about learning to coexist, to bridge worlds, and to discover the extraordinary potential of humanity in an alien environment. The storm had passed, leaving the alien world outside shimmering with renewed vibrancy. Twin suns reflected off the luminescent forest and rivers, casting light in patterns Ethan had never seen on Earth. He stepped out of his room, feeling a mix of fatigue and exhilaration. Surviving the storm had tested him physically, mentally, and emotionally, but it had also taught him a crucial lesson: observation, patience, and understanding were more important than brute effort. Kaylee was already in the common room, moving gracefully as she tended to the house's energy panels. Her skin shimmered faintly, a soft gradient of color indicating calmness after the storm. Ethan approached cautiously, noting her posture, the subtle hum vibrating from her chest, and the gentle shifts in her skin patterns. Each of these cues had become familiar over the past days, yet he knew Kaylee's mating season was far from over. "You're early," Kaylee said, glancing at him. Her voice was calm but firm. "I wanted to review some key techniques today. You've done well surviving the last few days, but now we must focus on anticipation and intervention in subtle ways, without breaking boundaries." Ethan nodded, feeling a mixture of excitement and nervousness. "I'm ready." They began with observation exercises. Kaylee demonstrated how even the slightest changes in posture, breath, or hum could signal a shift in her energy levels. Ethan studied intently, learning to interpret her cues almost instinctively. A flicker of her eyes meant an approaching surge. A quick inhale signaled tension, and a slight contraction of her shoulders indicated she needed grounding. "Humans have an advantage in observation," Kaylee explained. "Your minds are less influenced by instinctual energy. You can notice patterns we Xerans overlook. That is why you are capable of helping me." Ethan absorbed her words carefully. He realized that the role he had been playing, observer, learner, and subtle guide, was critical. During the previous storm, his calm had prevented chaos. Now Kaylee's instruction allowed him to act with purpose, anticipating rather than merely reacting. Their first exercise involved energy redirection. Kaylee demonstrated floating objects and channeling small bursts of energy in controlled waves. Ethan watched closely, noting the subtle shifts in her skin color and hum frequency as she manipulated the energy. He realized that predicting these surges could prevent accidents and keep both of them safe during intense episodes. "You must learn to guide energy without direct contact," Kaylee said. "Your presence, voice, and calm intention are tools. Interfering physically could trigger reflexive surges, which can be dangerous." Ethan nodded, practicing a series of verbal and visual cues as Kaylee executed each maneuver. Slowly, he began to anticipate when she would release energy, preparing the environment and even redirecting minor disturbances before they occurred. Kaylee observed silently, her glowing skin shifting in approval. After hours of practice, Ethan felt a surge of confidence. "I think I'm getting it," he said cautiously. "I can anticipate some of your movements before they happen." Kaylee's eyes flickered softly. "Good. That is exactly what is needed. You must be proactive yet non-intrusive. That is the balance humans must strike when coexisting with Xerans during sensitive periods." Their next challenge was more personal. Kaylee's instinct-driven behaviors. She explained that her mating season caused heightened energy fluctuations, occasional unpredictable bursts, and strong emotional waves. Ethan had to learn to recognize these without misunderstanding or fear. They simulated scenarios. Kaylee would trigger a small surge, and Ethan had to guide her through calming techniques without physical interference. He learned to maintain eye contact, modulate his voice, and use grounding phrases to stabilize her. Each success built trust between them. Kaylee's hum softened, her skin patterns became steady, and a subtle glow of approval radiated from her presence. "You are improving rapidly," Kaylee said during a break. "Few humans can achieve this level of understanding in such a short time. Your patience and observation are admirable." Ethan felt a warm sense of pride. "Thanks. I couldn't have done it without your guidance." Kaylee's faint smile was almost imperceptible but significant. In Xeran culture, subtle expressions were indicators of trust and approval, and Ethan recognized the importance. Their relationship had evolved from cautious observation to cooperation and mutual respect. As the day progressed, they encountered a minor incident. A sudden, unexpected fluctuation in Kaylee's energy caused several floating panels to drift uncontrollably. Ethan reacted instinctively, guiding her verbally and subtly shifting his position to help channel the energy toward the chamber's stabilization nodes. The panel settled and Kaylee's hum returned to a calm frequency. "You handled that very well," she said, her eyes flickering softly. "You didn't panic. You used your understanding. That is exactly what is needed." Ethan exhaled, feeling a mix of relief and accomplishment. "I'm learning. Slowly, but I'm learning." Kaylee paused and studied him for a moment. "Human ingenuity is remarkable. You combine observation with problem-solving in ways Xerans often overlook. That gives me confidence." Ethan realized that part of surviving and thriving in this environment was not just managing Kaylee's instincts, but also recognizing the strengths he brought as a human. His patience, logic, and ability to think differently complemented her biological instincts. Together, they could navigate challenges that neither could manage alone. Later, they moved outside to the courtyard. The air was fresh, filled with the scent of alien flora, and the twin suns cast shifting shadows across the luminescent plants. Kaylee demonstrated how energy interacts with the environment, showing Ethan how certain plants absorbed or reflected surges, acting as natural regulators. "You see," she said, "coexistence extends beyond immediate control. Understanding the environment is critical. Energy flows through all things here. If you disrupt one part, it can have unintended consequences." Ethan nodded thoughtfully, observing the plants and subtle currents in the air. "It's like a living system. Everything is connected." Kaylee's gaze softened. "Exactly. That is why your awareness and adaptability are so important. You are learning not just to survive, but to coexist in harmony with Xeran life." As evening approached, Kaylee suggested they review her grounding exercises indoors. The chamber glowed softly, adjusting to her energy levels. Ethan practiced alongside her, using verbal cues, observation, and subtle environmental adjustments to help her manage surges. Each successful exercise strengthened their trust, and Ethan felt increasingly capable of handling future challenges. During a quiet moment, Kaylee looked at him thoughtfully. "You have proven yourself not only patient but understanding. Few humans would have adapted so quickly. That is impressive." Ethan smiled, feeling a deep sense of connection. "I think I understand a little more now. Not just about your species, but about how to work with you, not against you." Kaylee's soft hum vibrated through the chamber. "Yes, that is exactly what I hope to see. Cooperation, empathy, and awareness. These are the keys to navigating mating season safely." The night was calm, the twin suns replaced by alien constellations shimmering above. Ethan lay in his room reflecting on the day. He had learned more about Kaylee's instincts, biology, and behavior than he ever expected. More importantly, he had discovered the value of patience, observation, and adaptability, not just in surviving, but in forming trust across species. Outside, the alien landscape pulsed faintly with life. Ethan realized that living on this planet was more than survival. It was about understanding, harmony, and discovering how humanity could adapt in extraordinary circumstances. He felt a quiet sense of pride and anticipation. The final stages of Kaylee's mating season were approaching, and he now had the skills, insight, and growing bond with Kaylee to face them. For the first time, Ethan didn't feel like an outsider in this alien world. He felt like a participant, an observer, a guide, and a human capable of bridging the gap between two very different species. And he knew that the days ahead would test everything he had learned, pushing both him and Kaylee to their limits. But he also knew something else. Together, they could navigate any challenge. The next morning, Ethan awoke to a soft hum reverberating through the house. It was Kaylee moving through the corridors with a calm but steady energy. Her skin shimmered in soft gradients, indicating a balance she had not fully achieved until now. The storm of her mating season, which had begun with wild surges and unpredictable bursts, had reached its peak. Today, they would face the final stage together. Ethan took a deep breath. He had spent days observing, anticipating, and learning Kaylee's subtle cues. He knew her moods, her patterns, and the rhythms of her energy. More importantly, he understood how to guide and coexist without triggering instinctive chaos. He was ready. Kaylee entered the common room, her eyes flickering in shades of soft blue and violet. "Ethan, today will be the ultimate test," she said, her voice calm but firm. "The peak of my mating season is demanding. If you can maintain composure and assist appropriately, we will achieve harmony. Fail and it could be challenging." Ethan nodded, his heart pounding with both anticipation and determination. "I'll do my best," he said, his voice steady. The first surge came quickly. Kaylee's hum intensified, vibrating through the floors and walls. Objects began to float. Subtle currents of energy filled the air, and her skin shifted rapidly through patterns that signaled rising instinct. Ethan observed, predicting her movements and preparing the environment. He began using the techniques Kaylee had taught him: verbal cues, calm posture, and subtle environmental adjustments. He guided her attention to grounding points in the room, softly reminding her to focus on control. Slowly, the floating object settled and her hum softened. "You anticipated correctly," Kaylee said softly, her skin flickering in approval. Few humans could manage this at peak intensity. Ethan felt a surge of pride but kept his focus. The mating season's challenges were far from over. Kaylee's energy levels fluctuated unpredictably, and the next wave came stronger. Testing both his patience and understanding, he noticed the smallest cues: a flicker of her eyes, a subtle shift in her hum, a tension in her shoulders, and acted preemptively. He guided her through breathing exercises and grounding techniques, creating a rhythm that matched her energy rather than fighting against it. For the first time, Kaylee moved fluidly with him, their actions almost synchronized. Hours passed and the surges continued. Each episode tested Ethan's observation, his adaptability, and his calm. But each time he succeeded, and Kaylee's energy stabilized more quickly. The house itself seemed to respond, panels and walls adjusting smoothly to absorb excess energy. By midday, Kaylee paused, breathing softly. "You are exceptional," she said, eyes reflecting genuine admiration. "Your understanding of my species, your patience, and your calm. It is remarkable. You have not only survived my mating season, you have enhanced it." Ethan smiled, exhausted but satisfied. "I didn't do it alone. You taught me everything, I just applied it." Kaylee's skin shimmered in soft hues, a Xiran sign of deep approval. "Few humans could learn so quickly. You are extraordinary." The peak of her mating season was approaching, the final and most intense stage. Kaylee's energy surged in waves that seemed almost uncontrollable. Ethan focused, using every skill he had learned: observation, anticipation, verbal guidance, and subtle environmental adjustments. One particular surge caused a significant disturbance. Objects floated rapidly, energy waves radiated through the room, and Kaylee's hum reached a high, resonant pitch. Ethan remained calm, observing every cue. He guided her to focus on grounding points, whispered rhythmic phrases to align her energy, and positioned himself to avoid triggering reflexive surges. Slowly, the energy began to stabilize. Kaylee exhaled deeply, her skin returning to softer hues. She glanced at Ethan, her eyes reflecting gratitude and trust. You have done it, she said softly. You have mastered coexistence at the peak of my mating season. Ethan let out a long breath, feeling relief, pride, and exhilaration all at once. We did it, he said quietly. Kaylee's soft hum resonated through the room, a sign of complete harmony. Yes, together. That is the only way to achieve balance. For the rest of the day, they focused on maintaining equilibrium. Ethan continued to observe, anticipate, and guide subtly, reinforcing the patterns that had worked so well. Kaylee's energy remained steady, her hum calm, and the environment responded smoothly to their synchronized actions. By evening, Kaylee's mating season had passed its peak. The energy in the house stabilized completely, and the two of them sat in the common room exhausted but content. Ethan marveled at the transformation. The chaotic surges of the past days had been replaced by controlled, harmonious energy. You have proven yourself invaluable, Kaylee said, her voice gentle and sincere. I could not have managed this alone. Your understanding, patience, and calm. They are qualities that humans possess in ways Xerans often overlook. Ethan felt a warm sense of pride. I just wanted to help and understand. I've learned so much about you and your species. Kaylee's eyes softened. And I have learned much about humans. You are capable of adaptation, patience, and cooperation beyond what I expected. That is why I trust you. They spent the night in quiet reflection, sharing observations about the world outside, the rhythms of the house, and their experiences during the mating season. Ethan realized that surviving and thriving in this environment was about more than understanding biology. It was about empathy, cooperation, and trust. The next morning, Kaylee suggested they move outdoors. The alien world was vibrant and alive, the forests glowing softly under the twin suns. Ethan followed her, observing how she interacted with the environment. Plants responded to her energy. Streams glimmered with natural luminescence, and the air carried a faint hum that resonated with both of them. You see, Kaylee explained, life here is interconnected. Energy flows through all things. Harmony with the environment is as important as harmony between individuals. Humans and Xerans can coexist, not only because of observation and control, but because of understanding and respect for the world itself. Ethan nodded, watching a small stream shimmer as Kaylee guided energy gently into it. It's beautiful. And it makes sense. Everything is connected. Kaylee smiled faintly, a soft shimmer of approval across her skin. Exactly. And you have proven that humans can understand, adapt, and cooperate in ways Xerans sometimes overlook. That is why your presence has been remarkable. Over the next few days, Ethan and Kaylee continued their routines, but the tension of mating season was gone. The energy in the house and around them was stable, harmonious, and calm. They worked together seamlessly, guiding, observing, and cooperating. Trust and respect had grown into a quiet bond, unspoken but strong. One afternoon, Kaylee turned to him, eyes glowing softly. Ethan, you have learned to coexist, to anticipate, and to guide without interference. That is no small achievement. You have shown qualities that are rare among humans. Ethan smiled, feeling both humility and pride. I learned from you, and I realized that understanding, patience, and observation can solve problems that force and instinct cannot. Kaylee's hum resonated gently. Yes, that is the essence of coexistence. You have passed the ultimate test, not just of my mating season, but of trust, respect, and cooperation across species. Ethan looked at her, realizing how far he had come from a nervous, uncertain human trying to survive in an alien world, to someone capable of understanding, predicting, and assisting a being far beyond human instincts. I'm glad I could help, he said quietly. Kaylee's skin shimmered softly in approval. And I am grateful. Our bond is strengthened, and the challenges we faced together have shown that humans and Xerans can achieve harmony through understanding and respect. As the twin suns set, casting golden light across the alien landscape, Ethan and Kaylee stood together, observing the beauty of their world. The mating season had tested them both, pushing them to limits of patience, understanding, and cooperation. And now, having navigated the challenges successfully, they had achieved balance not only within themselves but also with each other and their environment. Ethan realized that surviving and thriving in this alien world was not about dominance, fear, or instinct. It was about empathy, awareness, and partnership. He had faced challenges beyond anything he had imagined, learned to navigate instincts and energy flows, and emerged capable, confident, and deeply connected to Kaylee. For the first time, he felt truly at home, not just on this alien planet, but in a world where understanding, patience, and cooperation could bridge species and create harmony. And in that moment, he knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, he and Kaylee could face them together. Their journey had begun with uncertainty, fear, and the alien chaos of instinct, but it had ended in trust, harmony, and a bond that transcended species. And for Ethan, that was more extraordinary than anything he had ever imagined.